the only thing we control is how we think and feel, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or if you're living on Skid Row, you still control how you think or feel every day. And, the truth is that comedy equals tragedy plus time.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Thrive State Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. V, triple board certified MD and performance and longevity expert. Have you ever said to yourself, I will be happy when blank, or I will do X after I do this? There's so many things that we put off in our life until, of course, sometimes things that happen in life that just makes us understand that there might not necessarily be the time available to do that. On today's podcast, we'll talk about what it means to be an experiential billionaire. That's right, being able to truly feel like you've got the moments in life, those memories, that life that's worth living because there's value in it. We have a guest today that really has lived the story of the experiential billionaire and actually teaches people how to actually create more memories in life. And what we know in science is that living your life, being true to you, being true to your dreams, fulfilling all the things that make you happy, actually extend your life and actually increases the performance in whatever you're doing in life, whether it be in your work, relationships, or your health. Now, before we get into the podcast, let me welcome you in. Hey, it's Dr. V. If you haven't met me, this is the place where we teach you how to get into the Thrive state. What is that? It is actually an energetic state of being. It's a feeling. It's a energy that we exude to the people around us and to every single cell in our body, giving us access to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And on this podcast, I get a chance to interview world thought leaders and experts in the field of longevity, performance, human potential, areas in life that affect our health, our relationships, and the work that we do. So, thank you for all of you newcomers that got attracted to this podcast, but let me also thank the loyal listeners of the Thrive State Podcast, the people who have been spending your time with us, allowing this show to grow. Thank you for being a loyal listener. And if you haven't done so already, if this podcast is giving you any value, and if you want to help us grow, please do any and all of the following, including subscribing, hitting that notifications button, engaging with our content by commenting, and sharing this podcast with your friends and family members. And just for doing that, for allowing this show to grow, I want to give you some gifts. So if you haven't already, pick up these 2 free resources. Resource number 1 is the Thrive State bundle, where I give you basically a plethora of longevity and performance resources, including breathwork techniques, lecture notes that have frameworks on performance and longevity and resilience. It has a free ebook in there. All of that for you, you can get at thrivestatestarter.com. And also, you get the Thrive State Toolkit. If you haven't visited the mythrivestate.com website, it is basically a digital library where you could join our community and where you can get access to online courses. One of those courses being the Thrive State Accelerator. It is a course that teaches us how to tap into our habits, how to break bad habits, how to install new ones, because if we can create those in 7 specific areas of our life, we will achieve the Thrive state. And I can put my stamp of authority that you could become your best doctor, for you to be able to elevate your health, your longevity, and your potential by applying the Thrive State Accelerator. And what I'm going to give to you for free is all the worksheets, all the journal prompts, and all the frameworks in that course to you delivered to your mailbox for free at mythrivestate.com/toolkit. All those things are yours for being such a loyal listener and for helping this show grow. Now, on to today's podcast. This was actually shot as a part of a mastermind called the Bucket List Mastermind in my Thrive State community. You can join that community for free right now at facebook.com/groups/Thrive State. And in the community, we actually talked about creating a bucket list because we could actually start doing the things that make us feel alive. And what we're starting to find out through epigenetic science is that feeling of being alive, the feeling of being more of you, actually activates the biology of human performance, longevity, and resilience. And so we started on doing a bucket list. People started listing out the different things that they wanted to do, achieve, experience in life, and started to take actions on them. And today our guest is really talking about just how important experiences are to our life. They basically shape our life. They bring the emotions into our life. And like I said, emotions, what we feel, is actually a living, breathing gauge of the biochemical and molecular symphony that's going on inside our body right at this moment. And so being able to tap into those states is healing and is good for longevity and performance. So he's a good friend of mine. I'll do the introduction in the session this time around. But ladies and gentlemen, please enjoy this conversation with myself and the experiential billionaire, Joe Huff. Welcome everybody back to this version of the Bucket List Mastermind, special edition of the Thrive State podcast with my good friend, Joe Huff. And with us today, it is my pleasure to be speaking with a good friend of mine that I've met in the keynote speaking world. He is a maestro of life experiences and an entrepreneurial genius. With over 3 decades of entrepreneurial expertise, Joe has not only founded and sold multiple 8-figure businesses, but has also profoundly impacted tens and thousands of lives all over the globe. As a co-author and best-selling book of The Experiential Billionaire, he is not only a renowned speaker, but his profound insights into living a rich, experience-filled life shared with corporations all across the globe. From dancing with Northern Lights to training as a samurai, Joe's life is a testament to living boldly and without regrets. Today, he joins us from Los Angeles, I think, where he lives with his beautiful family and continues to inspire and leads others to the path of personal and professional fulfillment. Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. And some of that stuff you said is true. So,
well, Joe, let me just go back a little bit because, you have definitely been an entrepreneur, created great businesses, sold multiple businesses. Tell us a little bit about that entrepreneurial journey. What was, 30 years ago, what was the entrepreneurial spark? What got you engaged in entrepreneurship? And we'll talk about the pivots after that, but let's start there.
Sure. That's a great question. It started off, there was a moment, and I'll do the abridged version, but I had a rough adolescence. And there was a moment when, in high school, I didn't know what I wanted. But when I looked around, I saw that a lot of my friends were really struggling to make that transition into adulthood. And a lot of my friends at the time were battling addiction and having a lot of real life problems. And a lot of them were going to rehab and to jail, and some people even died. And I didn't know what I wanted, but I knew it wasn't that. And I was starting to take responsibility for my life. I was starting to figure out that, I could take radical responsibility for my one and only life and make decisions and try to take actions toward them. And right when that happened, my dad actually suddenly had a near-death experience where he was only 48 years old, and he suddenly had this episode that we thought was a heart attack. It turned out it was advanced stage heart disease. His heart was failing. He wound up on life support, given very low odds of survival, wound up getting a heart transplant 70 days later. And during that period, while we were watching this, unfold, it gave me a lot of time to think about all the things my dad had still wanted to do, but hadn't. And that was a really powerful moment because it was really terrifying on the one hand, but on the other hand, it gave me this really amazing gift of urgency because I had been made suddenly very aware that there wasn't a guarantee on how much time that we all have to identify and take action on our most important dreams and goals. And, that kicked off a whole crazy life that I don't think ever would have happened because my dad did get the heart transplant. There's a happy ending to that story. And when he did, he had to change his whole life around because he hadn't been doing any of the things. He hadn't even identified, I think, the things that he thought he would care about besides raising a family, which is obviously no small thing, but he hadn't identified any of the other things that meant something to him. So he had to recreate this life, and watching and witnessing that gave me this, urgency to try to figure all the things I wanted to do in my life. And we came from pretty humble beginnings. My parents were blue collar family that, my mom and dad met on an assembly line making brake pads in the Midwest. Our closest experience to a trust fund was trusting that we would get the occasional trip to the ice cream truck. So that was about it. But what happened was that gave me this urgency to try to do things, and things that I don't think I ever would have had the confidence to do, because even though I had, wanted to do those things, like most people, I had all the same obstacles. I didn't have the time. I didn't have the money. I was afraid of failing and what would happen if I tried something and it didn't work out. But after watching what happened to my dad, I realized that I should be more afraid of what would happen if I never got around to doing the things I said I wanted to do, or at least attempting them. So it started off simply. I thought of the things that I had said I wanted to do and made a bit of a list. And one of those things was move away from everyone I grew up with and move to the beach. And I wound up meeting a couple girls at a party that said they wanted to move to the beach. And after a few weeks, I found a place and called them and said, hey, do you guys still want to move to the beach? Because I found a place. And I wound up moving to the beach with a couple girls that I met literally at a party. And that changed a bunch of things again in my life. But it wasn't like it was some big bucket list thing necessarily, but it showed me that, again, I could identify and take action on things. And from there, I started thinking, I was working a bunch of odd jobs, trying to fill up my time with valuable experiences. And I slowly saw that, for me to actually get somewhere, because I really didn't have the opportunity to use, that college wasn't a path to success for me. Long story short, because I barely managed to graduate high school. So that left, working really hard at other companies or trying to start something of my own. And being really financially challenged, I had to be that typical, scrappy entrepreneur. So it started off with my first credit card. I got a credit card and it was a $600 balance. I'll never forget this. And I immediately went out, and one of the only classes I had passed in high school, my sophomore year, was screen printing. So I thought I was a qualified fashion designer because of that. I grossly misinterpreted that passing grade. But yeah, so I wound up buying a bunch of t-shirts and starting a graphic t-shirt company. And it actually didn't last long. It failed pretty quickly because I was giving away far more shirts than I was selling. But I learned a lot and had a lot of fun. And again, it taught me that I could do things. And that led to me trying a bunch of different things and meeting a bunch of people and building a lot of relationships with people that are like-minded, that believe in dreams and trying things that might sound hard or difficult. And that led to, a few years later, another friend of mine saying, hey, you want to try that t-shirt thing again? And I thought to myself, wow, he must have not paid attention the first time. I definitely botched that. And we went for it, and we wound up we basically got, started with a little more money. It was about 10 grand, and we got some designs made and got a small warehouse that we didn't need because we wanted to build a skateboard ramp to skate in while we built our new Dolce & Gabbana enterprise. But what happened there, and this is kind of ties it all together, is that company, we bought a bunch of shirts, and, we were having a lot of fun, and I was giving away more shirts than I sold again, and that company was failing again. But I had all this experience by then, and I was able to actually take that failing t-shirt company and turn it into a successful shipping and warehousing business with over 100 employees. And, that was like a big pivot that just happened because by that point, I had the confidence that I could figure out how to get things done because I had been trying so many different things. And that entrepreneurial spirit has stuck with me ever since. I've been really always very, I think, fortunate to just believe that, if we think about it, there's always a way that's the best, one of the best ways to get through something. So that's how it all kicked off.
I wanted to dive into the mindset that potentially some people watching may or may not have if they've never actually gone into the entrepreneurial experience themselves, if they found themselves trying to find safety in a job perhaps. But that first time you failed, it was something you almost seemed to brush off and you smiled about it. There was a sense that you still learned something and you continue to go. That's not something that is necessarily taught. And I think for many people, their first big failure, they'll end up stopping. Was there something about your spirit at the time or mentor that you had that is just like, hey, you're young and just keep going? Or what allowed you not to take that sign of failure at that point and just go, oh man, I just need to find myself another job?
Well, first, I don't think it's that, simple or easy. And at the time, I definitely wasn't like, oh, that's no big deal. It hurt. But at the same time, there was this pride that I tried. And I saw what went wrong. And I thought, well, there are other things I could try. Maybe I can apply that knowledge. But I think that so much of what we are taught and the books that people read or that we hear about or what people want to believe are just all of these success stories that are really the highlight reels of so many people's lives. And what we really would learn so much more from and benefit so much more from would be seeing all the behind the scenes, because there's so much more tragedy. It's funny, like when I get interviewed, quite often people will say they clearly haven't either read the book or read my story. They'll say, are there any negative things that have happened that, that really stick out? Or was it, mostly a lot of wins? And I'm like, it's all negatives. It was like mostly negatives. like the wins are the little blips. But to me, it's like, that's the truth. That's that statement we all hear of, it's the journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
Never going to get to some point and be like, there, I did it, So it's really about that journey along the way. And I guess the answer to your question is, how do you measure success and failure, right? Did the company turn into, this hundreds of millions of dollars or some, success story of making millions of dollars selling t-shirts? No. Did the time I spent on it have a lot of value to me personally? Yes, tons. I had an incredibly fun time, made lifelong friendships that impacted my life and still do now 30 years later. So I guess that's a big part of like what we talk about in the book and what my philosophy is when you change the way you measure what wealth and what success looks like, it'll actually help you to identify and prioritize things in a way that'll lead to everything kind of succeeding, including your financial wealth. But it's all, part and parcel. So.
And I think that's something that many people have trouble grasping, only because maybe they were raised in such a way where the markers of success are maybe the titles that we have under our name or the amount of money that we have in our bank account. And if we look at those things only and measure our worth or measure our experiences or our value based on those things, without achieving those things yet, you can probably say that you might not have gotten to that space. So for you, being able to recognize the growth while you're actually in it is something that I find pretty unique. How do you cultivate that? And how do you share with other people how they could start maybe changing their mindset on how to cultivate these experiences, these growth, these relationships as being just as valuable to your success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that's really, the crux of it all to me, because, we ran a study of over 20,000 people and we asked them what the most valuable things in their life were and what the most important things and most valuable things that they want to do still are. And overwhelmingly, it was like 95% of those answers were all experiences and mostly things that people could do. It wasn't all like climb Mount Everest or stay in overwater bungalows or that kind of stuff. It was things like learn a language or learn an instrument or travel to somewhere that's not too far or expensive. It was a lot of stuff that people could do. And the interesting part about it was people know that, but that's not how they act. So the urgency is really the main problem, is people all think that they just have this abundance of time and they'll be able to get to things later. And that's where we get into trouble. We put things on what we call, we fall into someday syndrome. We put things on our someday calendar. We say, I'll do that when I retire, or when the kids are older, or when I have more money, or blah, 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 one of those things that we all say. And then after a while, we look up and it's too late. We actually just put those things off until we don't have time to do them anymore. So one of the tools that we use that I think is really helpful is to give yourself a deadline by imagining what you're going to care about at the end of your life. Number one, whenever that comes, what do you want your, eulogy to sound like? If you were to hear that today, is it good enough? Were you on the right track? Were you building the right things? And another great exercise is imagine that you don't have a long time. Imagine that your doctor just called and said, you've got a year left to live. What are you going to do in that year? And really think about that and write down what you would do, what you would feel so regretful if you didn't do in this one last year of your life. And, things that you could really do in 1 year time-wise, and remove some of the other constraints like money, because you'd probably figure out a way if it was your actual last year. And when you get that list sussed out and you take a deep, look at that, and then stop and compare that to how many of those things on that list you're actively planning or working on or working toward now. And again, in our study, if you're like most people, it's none or maybe one of those things. And then you have to kind of really stop and say, take stock in that, like, how can those things be so important that if I only had 1 year left to live, those would be the only things I cared to do, yet they're not on my to-do list right now today when I actually have time. And it's really important to end that little exercise or thought experiment with, this isn't about fear and death, because a lot of people, I think, have a lot of trouble thinking about death because it's so off limits in our society to have that conversation. It's actually about joy and life. It's about maximizing your time. It's literally about saying, I just need to realize the one fundamental truth is time is finite. So how do I make sure that I have the most fun and most purpose in the time that I have? And once you really start to flip that around, you can start to see things a lot more clearly. And then once you start to take those steps toward the things that matter, again, like myself, I couldn't imagine doing any of the things I've done in the last 10 years when I was in high school, but they happened because I started taking steps. And then once you start taking those steps, you get that momentum and your perspective keeps changing. You keep seeing more doors open, more things happen. And that's just so powerful to keep and cultivate that urgency and intention.
That's a beautiful thing. One thing that I noticed from your answers is this sense of fun that you're living life with. And every time I see you, the energy that you radiate actually is that of playfulness, of fun, of somebody who's really enjoying life. So many people that enter our community and know the podcast have always asked, how are you able to maintain that mindset? I'm struggling at the office, I'm struggling at the hospital, I'm struggling at work. It seems to be stress. And is that something that intuitively you grew up with, or maybe after the experience with your father, you're just like, I need to approach life differently? But how do you talk to somebody who might feel like they're, in a rat race in the job that they're doing or the business that they're running, to incorporate those elements of loving life or injecting more fun into our lives? I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, I just wanted to let you know, join our community. There's so many free resources and a great community of people that desire health, happiness, human potential, to have more in their life, more health, more energy. And when you have those two things together, you could create more happiness, more abundance, whether it be financial, romantic, all these things in your life. And if you're just starting out, you don't know where to go, just sign up for ThriveStateStarter.com, because in there you're going to get a bundle of information that includes a longevity ebook, a longevity and performance resource guide, lecture notes that come from my keynotes at Google, at Fortune 500 companies, all the insights in that keynote in lecture slide form given to you. And then finally, breathwork. I share 3 powerful breathwork exercises to access calm, which really gives you clarity and peace during the day, to access energy if you need to wake up and really motivate yourself, and finally a breathwork routine that you could do every single morning so that you could be very intentional with how you create that day. You could find all this stuff delivered free to your inbox at thrivestatestarter.com. And our community is growing. If you want to be a part of a community of people that desire the Thrive State, that are really in Thrive State themselves and help other people along with that, you could be a part of the community. You can get group coaching from me. We do breathwork sessions, meditation sessions, and you also get to drop in and participate in podcasts in the future. You could find more about the community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. So check out those resources. You're not going to be disappointed. And please enjoy the remainder of this podcast.
Yeah, again, great question. And I think that boils down to really coming to the understanding that the only thing we control is how we think and feel, right? So it doesn't matter if you're a billionaire or if you're living on Skid Row, you still control how you think or feel every day. And, the truth is that comedy equals tragedy plus time, right? So almost everything that you're going through, if you stop and take those things, this is a great exercise we do also in some of our workshops, is take one of the most traumatic things in your life or something that's been stressing you out now and write it down. And then think about what you might think about that thing in 5 years or 10 years. And so often it's something that's just going to be another funny story or an anecdote or an aside. Like for me, there was a moment that when I was 27 where the wheels absolutely came off and I had to file for bankruptcy and I was devastated. I had lost everything. I knew I was going to have to go around telling people I was bankrupt, but I saw the bankruptcy attorney and they told me it cost $2,500 to file for bankruptcy. So I actually had to go around telling people, I'd really like to be bankrupt. I just can't afford it. So I wound up using that as a joke in a stand-up comedy routine because it was so funny to me that this terrible moment was still something that I could laugh about because it's all going to turn around as long as, again, if your life itself, at the end of your life, most of those things you're not going to care about that you're worried about most of the time. And, a lot of the big things, it's usually when people have a near-death experience or a big health scare that they get that clarity. So what we try to do with all of our exercises and with my message in general is give people that clarity and urgency from a near-death experience minus the near-death experience, right? Because the reality is, those people that wake up after their near-death experience, then they propose to that girl or climb that mountain or go for that job, whatever the thing is. Those people realized that the only thing that really matters is like your health, your connections, your relationships, and your experiences while you're here. So it's a kind of a waste of time to stress. And I guess the last huge quote unquote aside I'll throw in is, if there's something super toxic, whether it's a relationship, whether it's your employment, whether it's, there's so many outside factors that can affect us. How do you change that? Are you just going along with it as though that's not changeable? It's not something that can be changed, because most of the time it can be changed. Even with your work, you could ask for a raise, or maybe you just need to change positions, or maybe change locations, or maybe you do need to get a new job. Who knows, right? Maybe you need to start looking. But most things in life, if you really stop and say, how can I turn this around or change it, you can create a different environment and create a different attitude.
That's beautiful. You mentioned this sense of urgency. And I think anybody who's ever seen you do a keynote will probably feel this sense of urgency and sense for wanting to change. I think every birthday, potentially, as people hit a new decade of their life, they'll feel a sense of urgency. Or at the beginning of every year, there's like, okay, here's a new year that's going to come. And how is this new year going to be different? And then a week goes by or 2 weeks goes by, and that sense of empowerment and inspiration we get from a keynote from Joe or that resolution that we set. Why do people fall back into the trap once life takes over again and not be able to connect with that? And do you have any strategies for people to take that inspiration and not let it dissipate when life seems to take over again?
Yes. Yes. And by the way, that happens even to me. I wrote a book about it and have all these exercises. I still have to stop and look at, wait a minute. Oh man, I'm getting off track. Yeah, that's really what we've created with Experiential Billionaire, is a bunch of tools that amount to accountability and momentum, and making sure that you don't basically lose that inspiration that you find. Like right now, I'm looking up right behind my screen. I have what I call my treasure map, and every year I stop and I put together this, my 2024 goals for this year. And it's things that are what's the number one most important thing? What are the personal fulfillment things? What are the things I want to do in business, et cetera? And I keep them written out and I put them right in front of my screen so I can see it all day. And that's accountability to me. I also share those big goals with other people. Like when I was writing the book or when I'm about to do something big, I always make sure to pick a couple of my closest friends and say, hey, I'm doing this thing and I'm trying to finish it by X. I'd love if you could, check in with me on this, because it's really easy to put off the big hard things and start, cleaning the kitchen for the 17th time this week, or whatever that distraction is you use. And, those little bits of tools and accountability really make a big difference. Statistically, even, I'll just share that, like, just by sharing, by having an accountability partner, it actually raises your odds of completing an important task by 68%. And by actually having a follow-up appointment, like at a specific date, it increases to 92% that you'll actually achieve that goal. So think about that. Like most of the time, if you say, yeah, I'm going to start a business or, do something like that, you don't have a deadline, because our personal goals aren't like work or school or, getting your taxes done where there's deadlines. But this is your life. It's more important than those things. So we need to create those deadlines and have accountability, just like we would with the other areas of our lives, to help us keep on track. And then I think too, like, the last yet most important part of all this is it's who you surround yourself with. If you're surrounded with a bunch of people that are on that excuse train, that are basically saying, well, I can't because of this XYZ, and you're going to be okay with that yourself. But if you're around a bunch of other people that are achieving a lot of things that you aspire to achieve, and again, I'm not talking about, it doesn't have to be like accolades. It could just be like somebody that's really in great shape, even though they've got kids and a job, and you want to be in great shape. That's a person that you should hang out with, because they're getting it done. So, and those are the people I think that can hold you accountable and, inspire you to continue to be your best.
That's a great point of really finding the exemplary examples to hold people to account. Now, remind people they can go ahead and ask questions down in the chat right now, because we'll probably close off questions pretty soon. But, I want to get a little bit more granular on accountability. When you ask somebody to be an accountability partner, assuming that you are able to find somebody who's actually been there, done that, who really knows how to achieve that, they might have a good sense of how to show up for you. But when you ask somebody, what are you asking them? Are you saying, hey, I really want you to hold me to account here, and if I don't do X, when I say I do X, I'm going to, I'll somehow be punished in a certain way? How do you best create this accountability system? And if you're somebody who gets asked to be an accountability partner, how do you best show up for that person? Because, one of the things and one of the questions we have, because we have a couple people actually working on their bucket list and they have accountability partners, and they're like, oh, okay, well, what are we supposed to be doing on our call? And how do we best set up this container of accountability with each other?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of levels to that for sure. You can actually, I think a lot of people are motivated just by knowing that somebody else knows that they said they were going to do something and they're following up with them, right? So just having, like, if you're like Kien, you reach out to me like, hey Joe, what happened with I heard you're supposed to run a marathon in October. Are you training? Are you ready? Or what? Just having that call is like, shit, I better start training. Kien's called me out on that. I just realized I haven't done any of that. And that's why even a lot of people, it is helpful to go kind of wide, even and, post it on your social media and, commit to something in a bigger, way. But yeah, in other instances, it's helpful to just tell someone like, hey, can you call me on X day? And I'm committing to finishing, the first 3 chapters of my book by this day. And I want that to be a real deadline. And if I don't, I want you to, take me to task. And, you could set actual penalties. A lot of people I know do, they set like, I'm going to, put money into X account. I'm going to donate to something I don't like. I'm going to, take away something I do enjoy from my life until I, accomplish that thing. So there's ways to incentivize yourself. Some people work better like that. But in a lot of the time, I think it honestly is just a matter of saying that thing that you're afraid of failing or afraid of, trying out loud. And then that gives you permission and also gives the motivation to try to finish it when you said you would.
You, in your keynote presentations, I know you share a very personal story of, some of the, family issues that's going on in your life right now. And if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, being the experiential billionaire, how does somebody who wants these beautiful experiences, how has this personal experience, made you commit more to really understanding and committing to these experiences and just, recognizing how precious life is and how are you navigating through personal struggles? Because, so many of us that like to preach about, about living life to the fullest, sometimes people think that we are immune to the struggle, the obstacles, and the things that happen. But can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. Yes. So the book was born. I'll give you the quick minute backstory of that. So the shipping and warehousing company led to me starting to work with philanthropies. And that led to me meeting my business partner, who you also know, Bridget, also speaks, and the co-author of our book. And Bridget and I started a company to, we saw a woman hearing for the first time. That inspired us to think, what if we could help give someone hearing for the first time? And we came up with the idea to start an audio company where we sell headphones and speakers, and we use the proceeds to help provide hearing aids to people in need. That story, and again, this isn't a rags to riches story where we made billions of dollars selling headphones. This is a different kind of rags to riches story, though, because about a year after we had this idea and started this company called Listen, we were on our first hearing mission, and we were on the ground actually giving hearing aids in a gymnasium in Peru. And we got to give this girl, Maria, hearing aids. And that was the first time. She was 18 years old. It was her 18th birthday that day. I'll never forget this moment. And we pushed the hearing aids into Maria's ears. She didn't know if she was going to be able to hear. She'd never heard, never had any type of audiology or, treatment, etc. And she just wanted to know. And the fear and anxiety and hope that was in her eyes when we did that, all of a sudden just her eyes just exploded open because she could hear. And her parents collapsed crying, and we were crying, and I was thinking to myself, Maria's hearing for the first time, and she's hearing me crying. It's a terrible first thing to hear, but I was like, don't worry, Maria, it gets better. But that went on to, over the next 10 years, Bridget and I, we never had a Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk moment or sold the company for $3 billion. But we traveled to over 40 countries and helped give over 50,000 people hearing aids. And that made us feel like, we were experiential billionaires. And that was worth more to us than any number in a bank account could ever be. Because if it all went away tomorrow, those experiences are ours. There is no bankruptcy or experiences. We get to keep that forever. And that is the moment we decided that the most important work we could do would be to create tools and write a book to help other people identify and take action on their most important goals. So that's what we did. We sat down and spent a couple of years, crafting this body of work. And right when we finish it and we turn it all in, a week later, my wife got suddenly and unexpectedly diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And our youngest son, Kien, was just born. He was 3 months old. And our other son was 2 years old. very unexpected. It was actually my wife's 34th birthday that week that she was diagnosed. And it was just so surreal and ironic that we were being given this harsh reminder of what we were trying to teach others, which is that life is short and uncertain, and it's important to make the most of every moment. And it was a really difficult period that followed, as you can imagine. But my wife's story, like my dad's, luckily has a happy ending, because after a year of chemotherapy, double mastectomy, radiation, immunotherapy, she is now officially cancer-free. So we're super grateful and thankful and happy. And it's really hard to explain that moment, that the weight that lifted when we found out she was cancer-free. And of course, we still like shudder to think about what would have happened if things had gone the other way. But the one thing that just stood out so much to us was we realized that one of the feelings that we had throughout that whole process was we didn't have regret, because it seemed like the whole decade prior to her diagnosis, we had filled up every moment with meaningful experiences because we had intention and we had urgency. And there was, again, we have small kids and all the other barriers that people have, and we're not super wealthy, but we made things happen that were on our list. We identified things that we knew we wanted to do, and we went after those things. And that was proof. That just showed me that all the stuff we wrote in the book and all the stuff we've been talking about, all the stuff I learned from my dad really worked, because we had this near-death experience just like my dad did. But when we came out the other side, we didn't have to change everything. We actually were on the right track. So that was just a really powerful moment. And that's a constant reminder, again, my wife has BRCA1, so there's a lot of, ongoing risk forever now that we have to be aware of. But every day, every week, every month, no matter what else is going on, we're still finding ways to fit in the things that are important to us with our family and with each other, and with our friends, and making sure. And we never regret those things, no matter how hard they are. Like I like to tell people, yeah, you do a road trip with your kids, there's going to be, whether it's projectile vomiting or some kind of disaster, mess, or crying kids or lack of sleep, but at the end, those are memories you're going to build that are really, really valuable. And same thing for your personal goals. If you're talking about raising children or inspiring your friends or relationships or coworkers, they're not going to ever be, inspired by the things you say. They're inspired by the things you do. People watch what you do, and then they go, wow, I have permission to try to do that thing or what I want to do. And that's really powerful. So that's the goal, I think.
That is very powerful. And thank you for just being a true testament to your message. And one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on is we're starting to find out through science that sense of being alive, the sense of living life through those experiences actually causes biomolecular changes, hormone changes, nervous system changes that actually has us live longer and puts us less prone to chronic disease. And so living our life with experience, living our life almost sort of like chasing life, the things that make us feel alive will actually bring more physical years, healthy years in our life. So thanks for sharing that. For people who want to find out a little bit more about the Experiential Billionaire and your programs, how do people find out more about you and the program?
Yeah, well, we have a website, experientialbillionaire.com. The book is available on Amazon, Experiential Billionaire, Build a Life Rich in Experiences and Die with No Regrets. We also created card decks. They're thought experiments to help you discover or rediscover your dreams and goals. And those are on Amazon. It's called Treasure Maps, Card Decks by Experiential Billionaire. And personal website is joehuff.com. And that you can hear all about the different topics I do keynotes on and workshops. And my co-author and business partner, Bridget Hilton, her website is bridgethilton.com.
Well, thanks for sharing those resources. Last question to ask you, of everything that you have experienced in life, what has been your best medicine?
Oh man, you mean what's been the most valuable experience?
It could be anything. Could be an experience, or could just be something that you found has been whatever has allowed you to heal your soul, body, mind the most?
Yeah. I mean, giving back to others is it's so cliche, or I'm not sure if it's, that people have said for a long time that you get more giving than the people that are receiving get, because there's just so much you get out of it. And I can testify to that, because it is so powerful being able to do something to help someone else. And those moments traveling around the world and giving people, I've been fortunate to give clean water to people in need in places like Haiti, and help build schools in places like Guatemala and Southeast Asia, and do a bunch of other things like that. And it's just really, really, really impactful. And then the most uber cliche thing is, you think you know a little bit about life, and you're the older you get wiser by realizing you don't know anything. And then having kids, like my kids, they're now 4 and 2, and the patience, the clarity, the seeing the world through their eyes, it's just, the most magical thing for me to re-witness the world in a way that I've forgotten. And, I think that's just makes every day special for me.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I mean, as a father to a 3-year-old and a bonus daughter to a 10-year-old, I can attest that they are probably one of our greatest teachers. And what you shared about giving is so important. And I just wanted to end on this note that of what giving actually does to our physical body. You see, when we're stressed out, when we're in states of stress, we are basically very active in the default mode of our brain. And that's been shown to increase inflammation and decrease our immune system when that focus is on in ourself. Every time we feel stress or anxiety and all these things, we're really focused on ourselves. And when we do give, we are giving our body and our nervous system a very important message. When we give, we're basically telling our body, we have enough, we are safe, we are loved, we are connected. In that state, you quiet down the parts of our brain that feels like it needs to survive. And that brings us more health as well. So thank you for sharing that. Joe Huff, you have been an enormous friend, mentor to me by just you living your life. And thank you for sharing your gift and wisdom with us today on the Thrive State podcast.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Kien, for having me on. And again, very thankful and grateful for our friendship, and look forward to doing more things together with you in the future.
Appreciate you, brother.
You too, buddy.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Thrive State podcast. And if you're finding that this content is really helping you and your family members, please consider supporting our mission and our cause of elevating health, happiness, and human potential for people all over the world. You can do so by making sure that you subscribe to this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family members, and leaving us a 5-star review wherever podcasts are heard. All these things are going to really help elevate the show and to give us the resources to continue to bring more content just like this to yourself as well as the people that you love. If you haven't already, you might want to consider joining our community. We actually have a community where people get to engage with me in group sessions, where we do breathwork, meditation, where we do challenges together, really to be able to get us access to health, happiness, human potential, so that we could have longevity and performance in our life as well. You can check out our community at mythrivestate.com. That's mythrivestate.com. And if you haven't already, pick up a copy of my book, Thrive State. It really gives you all the tools, the pillars that you need to create a blueprint to control the energetics of your life. Who are you? How you show up in the world? The choices that you consistently make create an energy in your body, and you can control this. And when you can control that, you also control the messages you give to your DNA that gives you access, again, to optimal health, longevity, and peak performance. And let me also just share a free gift to you. If you haven't already, please pick up my longevity and performance bundle, where I share lecture notes, ebooks, breathwork exercises, and longevity and performance resources at thrivestatestarter.com. Thank you so much for being a part of this community. Thank you for helping us grow
Remember always, my friends, that you are your best medicine.